Owen has fears, strong fears, that even victory tonight, if they're inspired by the wrong player to victory, will in the long term be a defeat. Explain your thinking.
Well, like I know it's like years old, and I hate to keep doing Game of Thrones references, but wasn't there a situation where Tyrion found the love of his life, and it turned out that his father was actually in love with her instead and stole her away from him? And it was quite a brutal scenario where the father gets killed by Tyrion in the end. I'm not sure if Arsenal will have that sort of level of revenge, but I just wonder, is there...
I'm struggling with the comparison, to be honest with you.
Remnants of 2008, 2009 coming back to Arsenal here, where the loves of their life are going to be stolen, Kenny.
Keep going.
They will be stolen.
Keep going
away.
on, keep going.
They will steal away with an elder.
This is Kevin Kilban explaining the Nations League here.
Yeah. See,
there's a thing called Oedipus, where, have you heard of that?
Yes.
Okay, so it's a bit grim for this hour of the morning, but
it is.
You know, it falls in love with the mother, ends up killing his father.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, let's go with that one. Let's go with that one, but I'm not sure about this.
Let's go with anything, basically.
Okay, let's talk football.
I'm not sure about the killing part at the end. So basically, Jurgen Klopp likes Gabriel Martinelli, and I'm very afraid that Liverpool will sign Gabriel Martinelli. Discuss.
Excellent. Thanks for that. Thanks for that bit of clarity, Alan, at the end of it. Has that been mentioned in the dispatches, is it?
Well, the potential links haven't been mentioned. All you can go on is Jurgen Klopp's actual words about Gabriel Martinelli, describing him as a talent of the century in 2019. The League Cup, obviously, that Liverpool dumped Arsenal out of a couple of months ago. He says that everybody should remember the name. Little Martinelli, we will talk about this player in the future. If he'll be without major injuries, he'll have a proper career. He called him an outstanding player. Obviously, I mean, maybe there's some sort of loyalty to Edu for spotting him and bringing him over. But I think, as we've seen in the past, if a bigger club comes in for an Arsenal player, they don't tend to hang around too long. Things are different now. They're moving in the right direction. But my fear is not so much this summer. My fear is that if Arsenal don't get top four this year, then there is a massive deal of pressure on the club to get top four this time next year, because then you're in a situation where Saka and Smith Rowe and Martinelli are all 1 year later in their contract. They're all 1 year older. They're all 1 year down the line and away from not winning the Premier League title or from the Champions League title. And I fear that there may be a crossroads coming again, just like Arsenal were in the end game of Wenger, where they couldn't push for those titles and they started to lose those players who could help Manchester United and Manchester City, for example, win those titles.
Yeah. That's always going to be the case, and you're right in terms of some of the young talent at the club. It's as good as probably not. Actually, it's probably the strongest pool of young talent that I can think of. I could argue maybe Pedri and Gavi and Ansu Fati in the Barcelona. But even like Manchester City, yeah. But in terms of the age profile of those players, Martinelli, you've mentioned, Smith Rowe, and Saka, the ones we're talking about in particular. Odegaard, you'd put in that category as well, but he's come in for big money, so you know you'd have to reference that. But that's as good as anything around, and you're absolutely right. Keeping those players, getting them under a long contract is going to be the biggest challenge in facing Arsenal going forward. And you're probably right, Owen. Those individual players will be looking at Arsenal saying, "Well, can I fulfil my ambitions here in terms of challenging for a title, playing Champions League football?" You're absolutely right. Year in, year out, I think that'll be important this season. If they can steal that fourth spot, that might encourage one or two of those younger players to extend their contracts, because that's going to be huge for Arsenal. If they're going to bridge that gap to the top kind of three, they've got to build a team around that young cabal of young players which they have. Personally, I think Saka for me is the outstanding talent of them. I wouldn't agree with him in terms of Martinelli. Martinelli's an interesting one. When he first broke into the Arsenal team, people forget he played a couple of games actually down the middle as a central striker and caught the eye. Now he's come back into the team and he's playing kind of left of a three and obviously doing well there. Still think potentially maybe he could step into a central area. He could maybe solve one or two of Arsenal's problems playing down the middle. I wonder if Arteta looks at him and sees potentially he could save me 50 million the transfer market by actually playing down the middle of the pitch. But Saka for me is the one, head and shoulders, absolutely out. That kid could play any club in the top clubs in the world. He could walk into PSG, Real Madrid at the moment, even Manchester City, and absolutely be seamless to transition playing in that environment. He's that good.
Now, the one thing is, I will kind of like completely say here that it is utter paranoia. If we look at the evidence here, the only person who is out of contract in that cabal of young players that you mentioned there in 2024 is Saka, and we know that Arsenal are working on getting a new contract, which is going to be worth a lot of money to Saka to get him beyond 2024. So all of a sudden then the 2023 window isn't as important as my paranoia just pointed out there, because Smith Rowe is 2026, Martinelli is 2025, I think. Right. And I think Odegaard
set on transfer market is 24. Martinelli when I checked this morning.
I'm seeing 2025 on.
Are you saying his
Opera.
contract's up? Are you saying when his contract's up, or?
Yeah, when his contract's up.
Yeah.
So like 1 year out, you'd obviously have
right.
have to cash
But they're
in.
in good shape then. They're in good shape.
Exactly. So that's why I'm saying it's just paranoia. But also on top of that, if something goes wrong in one of these contracts and they do have to cash in, or they're forced to cash in a little bit, it does seem that the recruitment last summer has been good, that if they got a massive windfall off a player, they could recover relatively well. As long as they don't have a fire sale, as long as they don't lose everybody, they could recover from a little bit of a transfer market setback.
No, I personally think they need to keep those players and add to it. I think I don't think that squad. I think they could pinch fourth position for obvious reasons this season, but next year I don't think the squad as it is actually strong enough to remain in that position. I think they need to strengthen. The squad's not deep enough. That's obvious. And I even think in certain areas of the pitch, still even think centre midfield. If you're going to be committed to Granit Xhaka in centre midfield for the majority of the season, I still think he can do better there. And the centre forward position is absolutely huge. I don't know what's going to happen. It's a big decision to make with Lacazette. You're talking about out of contract. He's out of contract in the summer. I think they've had the best of him, Lacazette. I think he's only heading one way over the next 2 to 3 years. My gut feeling tells me let him go in the summer. He's on a free transfer. Get him off the wage bill and go and buy big. They tried to do it in the window. Tried to get Vlahovic in. I thought it was a good fit. Couldn't get him. They need to go and spend the money, maybe not just on one. They need to make a decision then in terms of whether Eddie Nketiah is good enough to play as a number 2.
Also out of contract this summer.
Our contracts away, and if they don't look at him and think he can't lead the line for a period of time if we need him, then they got to get money for him. Now people have paid 20-30 million for him, and then you almost got to go and get 2 centre forwards. With the proviso that I said, that you don't feel as if Martinelli maybe can come in and play in that central area. So they're the positions for me. Basically need to keep what they have on, but they also need to strengthen if they're going to maintain that challenge for a top 4 and very slowly begin to eat in to those 3 teams above them. But they're in a good place. I mean, that's not a negative.
No question. No, it's just pure goals from the past speaking here, and it turns out it takes a while.
They've got a good manager now.
But they've
got a good manager now.
Turns out that way, yeah. And that was
taking them a while,
issue.
yeah, and it's taken them a while, isn't it? You're talking about new manager coming in, manager Klopp, the amount of time it took him there in terms of coming in, clearing the dressing room, preaching his mantra, getting people buy in, and all of a sudden, over a period of time, whoosh, gets ingrained, and you're on your way. It feels of Arsenal a little bit there at the moment. You watched them play the game I watched, the last game they played the other night. What was the game they played the other night?
Beat Watford or the one after that?
Yeah, kind of.
But Leicester City on Sunday.
Yeah, Matt. Last Sunday.
Yeah, they beat Leicester on
yeah,
Sunday.
Leicester, excuse me, I was covering the game. Yeah, Leicester, yeah. But you look at them play, when they're playing out from the back, it's almost like it's computer game stuff now in terms of the split, players understanding where they need to be, when to play 1-2 touch, playing around the corner, knowing where players are. You know what I mean? They're really playing at a good level now. There's a real kind of game understanding in terms of how they want to play and how the manager wants them to play, and they're being quite successful with it. Now individually they can improve around the pitch, but they are in a really good place. That's such a dangerous game for Liverpool tonight. Liverpool are really going to have to be sharp tonight. Not so much sharp in terms of their attack and play, Liverpool, but switched on really out of possession in terms of like counter attack because of the quality of those players that we've mentioned, particularly on the counter. Saka, Martinelli's absolutely rapid, isn't he? Odegaard looks as if he'll play. Smith Rowe can't even get into the team at the moment. But Arsenal are very dangerous at the moment. Liverpool aren't going to tiptoe their way through this game tonight in terms of 60-70%, you know what I mean, and playing maybe phases. You know, Arsenal playing with a lot of confidence at the moment. I'm really looking forward to the game.
Liverpool, do you make them title favourites if they win tonight?
Yeah. I think they're close to being there now anyway.
Right.
To be honest with you, yeah. Hasn't surprised me. I don't know, I probably didn't speak to you. It was maybe about a month or so ago, 3-4 weeks. Just felt as if Liverpool were primed to go. And to be honest with you, I'd have been surprised if they hadn't. But this isn't like, shouldn't be a surprise that Liverpool suddenly now are breathing down the necks of Manchester City. Just in terms, they just got on a bit of a run. Players back, squad top heavy, everybody hungry. Just felt as if, right, here we go. They're just putting a charge in here. So no, it hasn't surprised me. It looks as if Manchester City will hang around, so we should have a nice to and fro right up until the end of the season. But no, Liverpool are in a great place at the moment.
Liverpool hammered them in November in the game at Anfield. It was 4-0.
Yeah.
And it wasn't close. It didn't feel close.
No,
It
not at
really
all.
felt like this is an exposure of where Arsenal need to get to. But since then, Arsenal have obviously had form and a settled selection and decided what their best team is.
Yeah.
We've also got the Carabao Cup in the middle of that as well, where Liverpool exposed Arsenal again, and Arsenal were celebrating with the 0-0 the first day out, which, in fairness, was a good result in the context of things. But there was a gulf in those 3 games so far this season.
But even like Arsenal defence, that back 4 unit now is stabilised. They've actually got a partnership now, centre half. You know, you could kind of hang your hat on to a point. Still have small reservations about Gabriel, but he's improved this season. His in partnership with Ben White, he's been a stabilising influence there. Ben White, huge amount of money. You're talking about money well spent. Yeah, he's a good player to bring in. He has improved the team, but that's a huge amount of money, 50 million. But he has held Tierney's obviously top class. Left back Tomiyasu will come back in. Ramsdale, maybe a couple of question marks. People, ooh, it's a slight gamble bringing this lad in, playing with a huge amount of confidence, and then that confidence runs through the whole team. So even the defensive setup now, that kind of screening from Partey, like an animal in midfield, getting around, making tackles, breaking things up, getting on the ball, charging forward, scoring goals at the weekend, that bit of all action. So, well, that's what I'm saying. That's a big step up in terms of, so that helps in terms of the defensive solidity, which has always been an issue as well for Arsenal. That's looking a lot stronger now as well as to what we've been talking about in terms of their attacking quality. So yeah, hence the reasons they're in a good position.
Aubameyang started that game and played the full 90 minutes against Liverpool the last time. Things have changed. That was important.
I still have him.
No.
I still have him there at the football club. I've got to be honest with you. This is where I disagree a little bit in terms of Arteta. So I'm talking about Lacazette at the moment. I don't think he's the best fit there at the moment. I think they could do better. And for me, Aubameyang was better. Now you could argue attitude and all that.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's important.
So now we're getting back to managing players. Now you've talked up Tuchel, next Manchester United manager. He's got all the attributes, ticks all the boxes, strong personality, the whole shebang. So what was his attitude to Aubameyang when he had him at Dortmund? How did he handle him when these situations presented themselves, arriving 2 minutes late for the meeting, or coming down and missing a breakfast, and all being in a bit of a tiz and that? How did he handle it? Did he give him did he fine him? Did he ostracise him from the group? Did he publicly humiliate him? This ain't good enough. No, he handled him a different way. He understood, right, this fella, it's innate in the moment in his nature. I'm not going to fight him. But he's loved in the dressing room. The players love him. There's not an issue there. He elevates the team and makes the team better. So I'm going to suck it up. And that's how he handled Aubameyang. He said he was great at the training pitch, good trainer, brilliant player. But obviously he had these issues in terms of timekeeping, whatever you want to call it. But he handled it differently, and he got the very best out of him. Arteta's gone a different road. He's out the door now, and he's kind of, we'll see how he goes at Barcelona. He's having a decent spell there at the moment. So time will tell. I think he can have both. I don't think it has to be one or the other. I'm more Arteta to a certain extent in terms of discipline, the dress, and this is how things have to be.
How do you square we've got one of the best batches of young players in the world, and we're also going to have someone who seems to be jetting off, missing training, is our captain, and is supposed to be a leader, and he's setting a really bad example.
All about the dressing room. The specifics are important, but if you're talking about a bit of late keeping for me, I'd never a big issue with late people turning in. It was never a big issue for me. They came onto the training pitch, they kind of trained well, they turned up on Saturday and played. I had absolutely no problem with that. So for me, it's not how I feel like I'm a disciplinarian, it's how I'm perceived. If I let this go, I need to be seen to be strong. For me, my first thought would be, it's about the dressing room. What effect does it have on the dressing room? How is he being perceived by the other players? And if the other players look at him and think, oh, we just love this fella, we want him, we know how good he is, a lovely fella, we love his company, and he's a huge asset to the dressing room. For me, do you really want to go and burn all your bridges by coming with a heavy hand and ostracising for the group and literally actually pushing them out of the dressing room? That's interesting. I don't think it has to be one or the other. I think you can have both of those things. And I think the very best managers, and I think Tuchel's up there at the moment, this is how he handled them at Dortmund. He got the very best out of them. Now I like that style of management rather than potentially kind of the hard hand which Arteta has come with.
Yeah, look, I get the point you're making. I do think that probably there's a significant difference between the Dortmund dressing room at that stage, when you had a bunch of seasoned players who had won the Bundesliga under Klopp, and this current squad at Arsenal who you're trying to get to be the hard-working team that presses the way that Arteta
but hard work. That's the difference. If he's hard work, if he takes that onto the training pitch, he's sloppy in terms of his training. He's not working
or not showing up.
Bad hours. No, showing up's a little bit different. You're trying to make out he was on a private aircraft over to south of France,
it wasn't
Las
authorised
Vegas,
trip. He was allowed to go. He just returned late from it. The one thing I would say is that there seems to be a very big difference between how Lacazette and his role is perceived in the dressing room compared to how Aubameyang's role was perceived. And it feels that as if Lacazette is kind of like the dad of that squad at the moment, like he's the old guy, and also even the way he plays, the way he brings those amazing youngsters into play around him, kind of just as emblematic of his role in the dressing room at the moment.
All right, we'll let the listeners can decide. Yeah, you can leave a comment on the YouTube stream for us, or you can always tweet us at Off The Ball AM. And OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Still to come, hurling with Tommy Walsh. We've got John Duggan at Cheltenham. We'll talk to Andy Mitten in Manchester. But next, Keith Wood joins us.